STV News at 6.
Tonight, looking for answers. Businesses claim the Scottish Government's plan to reopen the economy is muddled.
We've been feeling quite hopeful in the run-up to the route map, hoping to get some clarity, but actually I feel, to be very honest with you, a very incredible sense of despair.
Nicola Sturgeon says she would be making it up if she gave a specific end date for COVID restrictions. Also making the headlines, relaxing the rules on care home visits, but some providers say visitors will need a vaccine before seeing loved ones. Alex Salmond says he will come to give evidence to the committee examining the handling of harassment complaints. And Neil Lennon resigns as Celtic manager with the club 18 points behind Rangers in the Scottish Premiership. I'm John Mackay. This is the STV News at 6 across Scotland. Good evening. The First Minister has moved to quell concerns about a lack of clarity in the pathway out of the pandemic. She says she doesn't expect the easing of COVID restrictions here to be significantly behind England. Business leaders have claimed the Scottish Government's plan to reopen the economy is muddled. But Nicola Sturgeon told the Daily Coronavirus briefing she would be making it up if she gave a specific date for the end of restrictions. And things could unlock more quickly if the numbers keep going in the right direction. Well, as you can see, at the peak around New Year, we were seeing an average of almost 2,500 new cases on some days. Right now, there are around 800 new cases a day being confirmed. Ross Govins reports.
Mainland Scotland has been in lockdown for 2 months. The First Minister has set out a tentative route to reopen, but not before the end of April. But for many businesses, it's posed more questions than answers.
The problem is the length of the timescales and the space between them really has left a lot of people feeling quite dispirited. So what would help is if we could get a little bit of clarity now round about exactly what is going to permit it. We got a sort of this roadmap, if you like, until the end of April yesterday, but what is missing, I think, is what happens beyond that.
Non-essential retail and hospitality could begin some trading again from the 26th of April.
The feeling we get from the general public is they're desperate to get back out of lockdown. So hand in hand from that, hopefully they'll be desperate to spend.
But it will be the middle of next month before further details emerge.
We are currently in suspended animation, and we need to get out of it, because we are now at the most horrendous situation where we were thinking that we were on the precipice of being able to reopen and start trading again. And we're not.
We have no hope. We have no dates. We appreciate that the route map in England is caveated. That's fine. At least they have dates to work with. And brides and grooms have hope. But as I said, we're losing so much business.
Scotland is set for a return to different regional levels of restrictions. South of the border, the Prime Minister's ambition is for lockdown to be lifted completely by the 21st of June.
So it's not that I think by the time we get to a point where England is definitely ending all restrictions that Scotland will be massively behind. There would be no real reason for that. The difference is I don't feel that I can stand here, maybe the Prime Minister knows things I don't, but I think that's unlikely in relation to the virus. I don't think I could stand here right now and say the 21st of June with any certainty.
As more funding is given to help those with long COVID, the vaccination programme continues. In Aberdeen, measures have been put in place for those with additional needs.
So people with learning disabilities might have found it more difficult to attend the main area of the clinic because it can be busy and noisy, and therefore it can be a lot more stimulating. Also, they might have to wait, and that can be really difficult for people with learning disabilities.
Vaccination numbers have dropped this week, but are expected to climb again in the coming days. Ross Govins, STV News.
One industry says it's still seeking answers: tourism. The Highlands is particularly reliant on visitors to boost the economy. Well, Nicola Mackay is in Aviemore for us tonight, where a downturn in tourist trade is having disastrous effects.
Well, that's right. The street here is usually buzzing with visitors, but we can see the shops are closed, bed and breakfasts and hotels are shut, and the bars are empty. Businesses here say that without a date that they can look forward to when they might be able to reopen, they feel they've been left high and dry. It's only maintenance that's underway at this outdoor adventure centre just now. The zip-lining action still on hold for paying thrill seekers. Tourism operators say the path out of lockdown is still unclear for their industry, and they're far from being out of the woods.
I need my staff to be on furlough because that's the only income I've got, whereas they need to be back working, whereas in England they can plan, and you know, they, as in tourist industry, they can be up and running before us. Yet Scotland, up here in Aviemore, it's based on tourism. We need to know.
Aviemore should be getting into full swing for visitors, but guesthouse owners have their doors closed.
We've been working through this pandemic for the last 12 months now, and we are not seeing a clear roadmap out of this. Hospitality is in desperate need of more support, but essentially people in hospitality just want to be open.
Despite the best winter weather here in decades in Aviemore, tourism has largely been on ice through the pandemic. Operators say without a bit more detail, they could well have to get their skates on when it's finally time to open up.
Would have been nice to have some more information. I mean, the strategic framework we've tried to follow closely, and I fully understand that suppress the virus, but with regards to saying that outdoor non-contact sports can start again, that's us in a nutshell.
Although it seems an end is in sight for opening up, shopkeepers are still concerned about what the future could hold.
We're not really sure when can we open up, when can we open up properly, when is there allowed to be movement where tourists can come to a tourist village, you know, so that we can start to survive again, you know, and how much of the season are we going to miss, you know, going into, you know, 2022? Are we going to be able to survive going into 2022?
The snow is slowly melting from the Cairngorms, and businesses in this Highland holiday playground are ready to go, but without a clear indication of just when they can open, say they are still simply frozen out. Nicola McCally, STV News.
Deaths in care homes linked to COVID continue to fall at a faster rate than any other location. And from next week, residents and relatives can finally look forward to seeing each other again. New guidance published today sets out how meaningful contact can resume safely. But one provider has come under fire for suggesting that visitors should be vaccinated before seeing their loved ones. Kay Nicholson reports.
89-year-old Netta Lavery has dementia. Since moving into a care home in Glasgow in May, she's had limited contact with her family.
Some days she's agitated, other days she kind of resigns herself to the fact that she's stuck in there, and you get your window visits, but it's like a cross between a zoo and a prison visit. I'm afraid that by the time we get in, my mum's not going to remember who we are. It should be about the quality of life now, not the quantity. And she's not had any quality in a long time.
From Monday, all Scottish care home residents will be able to have weekly visits from 2 designated visitors. But Barchester, which has 19 care homes in Scotland, says it wants every visitor to be vaccinated first. Barchester says it's trying to protect staff and vulnerable residents, but it's being urged to think again.
Layers of protection we have in place, which is pretty much 100% vaccination of residents, along with PPE, testing, all the other things, is enough for this level of visiting to come back. So we are collectively disappointed with that approach, and we're going to try and talk to them to get them to change their mind.
I would really appeal to all care home providers to come on board now. It's been a tough year, but we can do this. We can get people reunited with their families again, and there's lots of mitigation there in place to make this happen safely.
Our Time for Reflection leader today is the Right Reverend Dr. Martin Fair.
This week, MSPs were given a poignant reminder of the pain families are going through.
Behind every number is a name, and that every statistic is a somebody. I can't put into words how devastated my wife was to lose her dad in these circumstances, not having been able to see him.
COVID-related care home deaths have fallen by almost 70% over the past month. That, alongside the prospect of visits, offers fresh hope to residents and their families. Kay Nicholson, STV News.
Other stories across Scotland, and the number of charges being handed out to people for breaching COVID restrictions has more than doubled since the start of the year. In the first week of January, fewer than 500 were recorded by police. Last week, that number was more than 1,000. Planning to allow the development of a new border control post for ferries at Cairnryan has begun. The facility would allow goods from the Republic of Ireland and the wider European Union to enter and leave Scotland via Northern Ireland. The First Minister is attacking Alex Salmond for not turning up at a Scottish Parliament committee examining the government's handling of harassment complaints against him. Mr Salmond will now give evidence on Friday on his own claims that Nicola Sturgeon misled Parliament and broke the ministerial code. And the independence of the Chief Law Officer, the Lord Advocate, has been questioned at Holyrood. Here's our political editor, Colin Mackay.
This was supposed to be a big day for the Scottish Parliament. Alex Salmond was due to be questioned on his claims that the First Minister misled Parliament and of a conspiracy to have him jailed. Instead, at her COVID media briefing, Nicola Sturgeon was forced to answer questions about Alex Salmond.
Creating an alternative reality in which the organs of the state, not just me and the SNP and the civil service and the Crown Office and the police and women who came forward, were all part of some wild conspiracy against him for reasons I can't explain. Maybe that's easier than just accepting that at the root of all this might just have been issues in his own behaviour, but that's for him to explain if he ever decides to pitch up and sit in front of the committee.
At the same time, the committee investigating the Scottish Government's handling of harassment complaints was meeting and agreed to question Alex Salmond on Friday and the Lord Advocate on Monday.
We have reached an accommodation with Alex Salmond that he will appear in the Scottish Parliament to give evidence in person on Friday. Beyond that, we need to test the veracity of some of his allegations.
There is an unmistakable stench of corruption and sleaze that's coming out of this government, and it is breaking the Scottish Parliament. Holyrood is not being able to hold the government to account.
I wouldn't say the committee's been compromised. There have been difficulties. We had to wait a long time for some of the evidence from Mr Salmond. We had to wait a long time for some of the evidence from the Scottish Government. So there have been difficulties. But we're on the home straight. We're seeing Mr Salmond on Friday. We're seeing the First Minister on Wednesday.
The next item of business, which is an urgent question.
The Scottish Parliament had to edit Alex Salmond's evidence to avoid being in contempt of court. Today, the Lord Advocate was asked if he'd interfered.
To ask the Scottish Government whether the Lord Advocate was consulted about the letter from the Crown Office to the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body in relation to the evidence from Alex Salmond published by the Parliament.
Lord Advocate.
No, I was not. The decisions in relation to this matter were made by senior professional prosecutors acting independently.
The will-he-won't-he saga should end on Friday. That's the last chance for Alex Salmond to appear before the committee, and he says he will. Colin Mackay, STV News.
To Celtic Park now, and Rahman with reaction to Neil Lennon's departure.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's.
Good evening from Celtic Park. Almost 2 years to the day since Neil Lennon returned for his second spell as Celtic manager. He has resigned. He's gone with just 8 games to go this season. This was a season that everyone connected with Celtic had hoped Lennon would deliver a record 10th consecutive league title. Instead, it is Rangers who are marching towards lifting the trophy. Here's Ronnie Charters.
Sitting on borrowed time. The latest embarrassing result, the 1-0 defeat to Ross County, Neil Lennon's final match in charge before stepping aside. That result led to discussions amongst the Celtic hierarchy in the last 48 hours. And then this morning, Lennon was gone. In a statement, the Northern Irishman said it's been a difficult, frustrating and disappointing season. Lennon said he gave it his best and Celtic will always be a part of him. He says he'll continue to be a supporter and will always want the best for the club. Whilst majority shareholder Dermot Desmond also paid tribute to Lennon, saying he'll go down as a Celtic legend both as a player and a manager, and he will be a very difficult man to replace. In a season plagued by disappointment, the collapse of Celtic's 10-in-a-row dream will undoubtedly be a cornerstone of Lennon's departure. Rangers 18 points clear at the top, 7 points from the title.
I can't say I'm surprised because obviously what's been going on over there. But I obviously take no personal satisfaction from seeing that news to Neil or to any fellow manager that happens to. So I wish him well for the future.
Many Celtic fans have been calling for change since last year. These ugly scenes in November sparked by yet more disappointing results. But for many within the support, the timing of Lennon's departure was off.
It was something that we did expect, but I think the timing was unusual. A lot of Celtic fans were expecting this news some time ago. The news broke last night and there was a sense of relief. It was bittersweet because of who Neil Lennon is and what he means to the club and what he's done for Celtic Football Club. But it is now time for Celtic to rebuild.
So what does the future now hold for Celtic Football Club? Well, in the short term, it'll be this man, John Kennedy, who will take over as Celtic manager on an interim basis until a new appointment can be found. And that person will have to work with this man, Dominic Mackay, who takes over from Peter Lawwell as the club's new chief executive in the summer. But the changes don't stop there. As the club look to overhaul their footballing operations, a new role of sporting director will also be created to help the club improve their footballing department. And the man who Lennon succeeded in the job had his say on what should happen next. You're a man who brought great success to Celtic. What do you think now needs to happen this summer for that success to return?
I think in the modern game, to have that director of football, especially at a club like Celtic, where I think it's absolutely critical to have that. And then between them and the manager, which is absolutely critical in terms of recruiting the players that they want to bring in.
Neil Lennon insisted on countless occasions he would not walk away from the job he loves. But as Celtic's bid for 10 in a row ended, inevitably, so did the tenure of Neil Lennon as Celtic manager. Ronnie Charters, STV News.
Well, this season Celtic have limped from one disaster to another. Oliver Dickinson looks back on where it's all gone wrong.
Neil Lennon was the man the Celtic board turned to almost 2 years ago when Brendan Rodgers quit mid-season.
Very, very grateful to be here. That the board, Peter, Mr Desmond, have put the faith in me to see out the season.
3 months later, Lennon secured the final piece of an historic treble-treble, triggering an impromptu board meeting at Hampden.
Delighted to announce that after today's events we've offered Neil Lennon the job to be the permanent Celtic manager.
In a season cut short by the pandemic, Celtic secured part 1 and 2 of an unprecedented quadruple treble. But this season was thrown into turmoil from the get-go. Bolly Bolingoli's secret trip to Spain resulted in the postponement of 2 of Celtic's league games and left them playing catch-up with Rangers right from the off. On the park came an embarrassing exit in the Champions League qualifiers against Ferencváros and the first indications of disharmony in the dressing room.
There are some players who, may want to leave, and they've made that, inroads into that over the past, 6 months or so. So if they don't want to be here, then, we'll have to do something about it.
Celtic's recruitment was called into question, with big money signings Barca, Saeti and Duffy failing to impress. Meanwhile, across the city, Rangers were hitting their stride. It was the start of a run which saw the team yield just 2 wins from 12 matches. In the space of 4 days, Celtic were dumped out of Europe, and their run of 35 domestic cup games unbeaten came to an end following an embarrassing defeat to Ross County.
We've lost 1 trophy, that's gone. Our priority, as we know, is the league, always is. Every time you go into the season, we're out of Europe, so it's not been great. But there's plenty of time to turn it around.
But he didn't turn it around, and Celtic continued to play catch-up with Rangers. Then came the club's ill-fated trip to Dubai during a pandemic, which drew huge criticism. But in an extraordinary news conference, just days after the club's chief executive apologised for going to the Middle East, Lennon said this.
I'm not apologising for going out there and training for a week. I'm not apologising for the players having a day off. We did not abuse any privilege. We did the right things. We were absolutely, totally professional.
When Neil Lennon climbed the steps on his return to Celtic Park as manager, he knew what was expected of him. Ultimately, those are expectations he and the club have fallen short of. Oliver Dickinson, STV News.
In other football news tonight, Rangers midfielder Ryan Jack has been ruled out of the club's Europa League match against Royal Antwerp tomorrow night. Jack sustained a calf injury at the weekend, which will keep him out of action, the club say, for the next couple of weeks. And going from football to rugby news, Scotland's Six Nations match against France in Paris will go ahead this weekend. The game had been thrown into doubt following a COVID outbreak within the French squad, but after a fresh round of negative test results, the game has been given the go-ahead, much to the delight of the Celtic camp. That's just about all the sport for me tonight, folks, live from Celtic Park on the day Neil Lennon's second spell as Celtic manager came to an end.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's.
Now Sean has the weather and it's looking promising.
Blue skies and sunshine are in the forecast. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
Well, if you're looking for quiet and dry weather, you don't want to see this. The jet stream right over the top of us. But look what happens into the weekend. Bye-bye jet stream, it's heading to the north of us. High pressure moving in from the south. We hang on to a mild airflow as well, and the weather should turn drier and brighter for many of us too. Now, it's still been quite windy today, especially in the north and the northwest. We hang on to those little wind arrows whizzing in here through this evening and tonight. So still windy across the Western Isles, Skye, West Highlands and also the Northern Isles. And that's where we'll see the bulk of the showers. Central and southern parts, those showers easing away southwards. We could get some heavy bursts of rain here for a time over the next couple of hours, but then clearing south, becoming dry. And temperatures not quite as high as the levels last night, about 6 or 7 degrees, still a good few degrees above average, 2 degrees at this time of year normal, so 6 or 7 tonight. Now tomorrow we'll see scattered showers once again, the most frequent ones across the Northern Isles, merging into longer spells of rain here. Across western areas we'll see a good number of showers, driest in the east, highs of 10 degrees Celsius. Then on Friday for most of us it is dry with sunny spells, temperatures 10, maybe 12 or 13 in Aberdeen, not feeling too bad in the sunshine out of the breeze, some outbreaks of rain across Shetland. Now even though the weather is settling down with this high pressure moving in from the south during the weekend, look at this little weather front just trapped in the high pressure system, and that does mean across central and southern parts on Saturday it could be quite a bit of cloud, drizzly outbreaks of rain. Further north, good spells of sunshine. Look at that, 14 degrees in Aberdeen. Feeling very pleasant in that sunshine. Then on Sunday, for most of us, it is dry and bright. We hang on to a bit more cloud, though, in the far north. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors STV Weather.
Glasgow's Film Festival has, like so many other things, turned virtual, meaning you don't have to miss out. You can swap a night at the Pictures for a night on your sofa. Here's Laura Boyd.
The Glasgow Film Festival being online this year means you can enjoy the likes of the world premiere of Irvine Welsh's creation stories about the life of music mogul Alan McGee without even leaving your sofa.
Alan McGee. As I live and breathe.
Alan's story lends itself very well to the world that Irvine Welsh, is investigating and exploding.
It's Irvine Welsh's take on my life, to be honest.
While films from around the world will be screened as part of the festival, for the likes of Kate Dickie, whose film Under Gods will be shown, there's something special about showcasing your work at a homegrown event.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Glasgow Film Festival. I hold it really dear to my heart. It's wonderful that we can do it online, it really is, and thank goodness for that. Indie films don't always have big audiences, and film festivals are really important for us just to reach audiences. So yeah, very, very grateful, even though very, very sad that I won't be at the GFT this year.
And it's a great city for documentaries too, with the UK premiere of Tina rolling down the River Clyde to be part of the festival as well.
Even anecdotally, I'm having people saying to me,
Oh, wow.